glad you could join us today on Earthfall. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. The peak of the rainy season is when most traditional farmers hope on the rains to yield good harvest. Lovers of nature are also seen gushing about the breath of fresh air the rain brings forth. In Nigeria, the stories are usually on the contrary, especially for those living close to water bodies, mainly as a result of rising sea levels, constant rainfalls, lack of proper drainage systems. In some cases, people are carried away by the flood. Houses and properties turn to ruins. Farmlands also are not left out in the wake of the destruction. The attendant food insecurity for most farmers is stinging, coupled with the displacement. It's another rainy season, and today we look at the solutions on Earthfall. Do stay with us. Morning of Thursday, 18th of June 2020 in Lagos. Almost 90 millimeters of rain fell in Lagos from the 17th to the 18th of June, leading to traffic snarl across the state. The flood left in its trail damages and destruction of properties and loss of lives. Earlier this year, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency predicted that Lagos will have between 240 and 217 days of rainfall, with maximum annual rainfall expected to be 1,750 millimeters. The agency said the earliest predicted onset of the rainy season expected to cease by 22nd of November in Surulere, with other areas following after. Ikeja is expected to have about 1,526 millimeters, Badagry 1,750 millimeters, Lagos Island 1,714, Ikorodu 1,670, and Ekpe 1,730 millimeters of rainfall. Residents and the state government were then urged to be prepared. In March, the state government announced a plan to help mitigate the effect of the heavy rainfall.
Guided by core principles of providing a flood-free, hygienic environment in the state, this ministry is set to provide all year-round drainage maintenance for effective and efficient flood control, with diligent dredging of all primary channels and cleaning and distributing of all secondary collectors to enable them discharge efficiently and act as retention or detention basins. We are also working with local governments because ordinarily local governments are supposed to be in charge of tertiary drains. You know, we have three types of drainage channels. We have tertiary, secondary, and primary. So the tertiary drains, which are under the purview of the local government's administration and so on, we are already working with the chairman of local governments, so that as we are working on the state, as the state is working on the secondary and primary collectors, we are expecting that the local governments will start working on the tertiary drains. That's the tertiary drains are the drains that are in front of your houses and so on, so that the water can flow easily and so on. So we need that coordination to ensure. And also the manholes on the major highways, we have to open up the manholes because they also cause a lot of flooding. When you are driving, you find a lot of flooding on the road and so on. If the manholes are not properly managed, they will cause a lot of flooding on the road and cause a lot of traffic gridlocks.
The heavy rain also led to a garbage-filled neighborhood, a recurring problem in Lagos when it pours. For years, many residents in the state have complained about garbage piled along highways and drainage canals. This has led to poor sanitary conditions in many parts of Lagos, as canals fill with trash and standing water.
The ongoing cleaning exercise is a continuous process, which will end of September or early October. So it's an ongoing. For instance, we noticed that when also on the channels we have cleaned already, because as a result of the last rain and so on, we discovered that some debris has also gone back into the channels and so on. So our men are going back again to go and dredge those channels, clean them up again and so on, so that it's a continuous exercise. So to ensure that there's free flow of water across the channels. Regrettably, however, despite several warnings at different fora, some members of the police are not in sync with the state government on the matter of keeping our drainage channels free from refuse and silt, but have been dumping all manners of waste, including plastics, tires, and rubbers into drainages already cleared to allow for easy flow of water. Now, we are once again using this medium to sound a note of warning to those engaging in these unlawful acts to desist from, because if they are caught, we will ensure that they are diligently prosecuted. We are giving clear instruction to all law enforcement agents not to treat environmental and sanitation offenders with kid gloves anymore. Anyone arrested will be made to face the full weight of the law. We are also stepping up our drainage compliance enforcement to ensure that we remove all infractions after serving due notices on them. Enough is enough.
Oyo River Dam is also another cause of concern, and communities affected by this river basin may have to brace up for what is yet to come.
The design capacity of the dam of Ogunshun River of Oyo Dam is 270 million cubic meter with an annual runoff of 1,770 cubic meter.
The Lagos State Commissioner for the Environment advised residents living along the plains of Ogun River to be on the alert and take necessary precautions, as the Ogun-Osun River Basin Authority, which manages the Oyo River Dam, will soon commence the seasonal water releases from the dam, stressing that the controlled water releases has become expedient as a result of weather forecasts and the continuous heavy downpours.
Receive a report from the Ogun-Osun River Basin Authority about the release of water, because we are having heavy rain, so they are impacted too. So which means that, so they've warned us, and they've told us that in July we are going to, about 5 million cubic meters of water will be released. While by August they will release 8 to 10 million cubic meters. But in September it will increase to 8 million cubic meters of water. While in October about 23 million cubic meters will be released. So this may have a lot of impact for a lot of, particularly those who live around Sherry, as well as Owode side of going towards Ikurudu, or after my 12 market around my, so people who live Magodo, the Sherry area, as well as in after Owode, Agboiketu, so they are more vulnerable. Okay, towards the Lagos East side. So, and they've told us that by November, however, by November there will be gradual reduction of that water. So we may have, so from next month now, they may start releasing the water gradually and so on. And that may also increase the level of flooding that we are going to have.
Flood is one of the most frequent natural disasters in Nigeria, with devastating impact on the poor and vulnerable populations who live along riverbanks and rely on floodplains for livelihoods. A total of 28 Nigerian states are at risk of heavy flooding this year, the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency said in May. Although the flood outlook showed that 2020 floods might not be as severe as in previous years, the agency advised that it is important for all stakeholders to carry out aggressive sensitization and awareness campaign for preparedness. The prediction showed that some parts of at least 102 local government areas in 28 states fall within the highly probable flood risk areas, while part of 275 local government areas in the 36 states of the Federation, including Federal Capital Territory, fall within the moderately probable flood risk areas. The states that are contiguous to rivers Niger and Benue, namely Kebbi, Niger, Kwara, Adamawa, Kogi, Anambra, Delta, Edo, Rivers, and Bayelsa states, are likely to be affected by river flooding.
Coastal flooding is also expected in Rivers, Cross River, Delta, Lagos, Ondo, and Bayelsa states, while flash and urban floods are expected to occur in major cities across the country due to poor drainage systems. As we all know, flooding is associated with increased risk of infection, and the risk is usually high when the displaced population is quite high and the water sources are polluted. This is quite inevitable during flooding. In order to promote proper hygiene, President Muhammadu Buhari in November 2019 signed Executive Order Number 9, which is aimed at ending open defecation in Nigeria by 2025. Many state governors have bought into this. Also, the ministry declared state of emergency in the water and sanitation sector to encourage hand washing, and has also put in place the National Wash Response Committee for COVID-19. These efforts are geared towards containing the COVID-19 and the spread of waterborne diseases during flooding.
Flooding has become an annual tragedy the rainy seasons bring forth. In some cases, people are carried away by the flood. Houses and properties turned to ruins.
I therefore appeal to the state governors to give the annual flood outlook information the attention it requires and to act swiftly to contain any effect of flooding so that we do not have a chaotic situation at hand. To other stakeholders, decision and policy makers, relevant federal and state government departments and agencies, I implore you to take note of the information contained in this 2020 annual flood outlook and prepare well in advance. While the National Hydrological Service is doing our best to carry out aggressive sensitization and awareness campaigns, we must all join hands to keep clean the environment, our waterways, that is drainages and gutters, etc., and flood paths, and to maintain proper refuse disposal and waste management practices, and also avoid contaminating water facilities so that the threat posed by COVID-19 will not be worsened by flooding as the rains begin to set in.
Experts say Nigeria currently doesn't have enough dams, as more dams will help to mitigate floods, and with the increasing global population and the expanding activities of man, flooding will continue to persist, hence the need to control human activities, environmental adjustment, and purposefully adopting actions in certain areas that will make adjustment possible.
We've been able to disseminate information to the governors ahead of time. But, flood issues are weather dependent, climate dependent. From what we have seen in our prediction, like one of the minister mentioned, 2019 may not be as severe as 2018 or 2020 may not be as severe as 2019. But you can't tell anything anyway. It's climate change issues. Anything could happen at any point in time. That is why we'll always ensure that we monitor regularly and then begin to continue to disseminate information on a weekly basis. So those are within the floodplain should not go and relax. Those within the floodplain should not relax yet, or living within the river banks. No, they shouldn't go and relax. All hands should be on deck to ensure that drainages are cleaned, get away from the floodplains during the season of rainy season to avoid being swept away.
And to tell you the flood information. The Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency has also launched a flood mobile app which individuals can use to monitor daily flood situations.
The app it can help people within the local villages who don't have access to smartphone, who cannot do electronic issues. But I think most people in Nigeria who own phones can send SMS, can read. That's part of what the app is saying, that once you send a message, there's a code we're going to send. That code is coming from the NCC, Nigeria Communication Commission. So that once it is available, you send a message to that place, which is customized to us as an agency. It will give you information. So it can go to the grassroots, apart from those of them who are in the cities, that can use go far using the mobile app, which cannot be downloaded within the Play Store.
Early warning signs are expected to help in ensuring readiness. Considering that flooding has become a seasonal issue, proactive measures will ensure minimal hazards and risks faced by people living in flood-prone areas. In Nigeria, the impact of flooding has been grossly enormous. In March 2012, 32 of Nigeria's 36 states were affected by flooding, in which more than 360 people were killed and almost 2 million displaced. In 2018, more than 1.9 million persons were affected by floods across 12 states in Nigeria. More than 500,000 of them were displaced from their homes. The National Emergency Management Agency in 2018 recounts that large-scale flooding impacted on 826,403 people and led to the displacement of 286,119 persons, with the death of 199. And in September 2019, rising high water levels in rivers Niger and Benue and heavy rainfalls in Cross River, Kogi, Niger and Taraba states have affected 18,640 households in 54 communities. And between June and October 2019, torrential rainfalls and flash floods have hit 124 local government areas within 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. This has affected a total number of 210,117 people, with 171 casualties recorded in hospital and 130,610 people reported to be displaced. Flash floods are due to the high intensity of the rainfalls at the peak of the flood season, which is experienced in places that are flood-prone. The floods have been widespread, with the worst impacting some states within the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. There are 5 states in Northwest, 7 in North Central, 5 in Northeast, 5 in Southeast, 5 in South-South, and 4 in the Southwest. Totaling 32 states severely affected out of 36 states in the country in 2019.
We do not understand how, for example, climate change is going to impact our rivers, our agriculture, the type of seed that we plant. How will a warming world of 1.5 affect rice production in Nigeria? And I can go on and on. Research is very, very limited. What is lacking is political will. And President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Paris Agreement. He was also in New York when it was ratified. He has participated actively in the Sustainable Development Goals. There is a link between taking action on climate change and reducing poverty and inequality. But I have not seen sufficient translation of this good statement and gestures into concrete plan of action. And that is where I think we need to pay a lot more attention. Climate change is not a sectoral thing. This is not what you leave for the Ministry of Environment. It involves huge investment in transport, in energy, in housing, in health, in oil facilities, and etc., etc. And so I think that we need to be taking climate change at the level of the presidency or vice presidency, or at least the National Planning Commission or National Budgetary and Allocation Commission, whatever you call it. And this is the evidence we have from many other countries that if you really want to take an action on climate change, you need a cross-sectoral planning commission level that can bring all the initiatives together from the various sectors in order to have a coordinated implementation plan.
Developing countries and smallholder farmers and pastoralists in particular are being especially hard hit by these changes. Many of these small-scale producers are already coping with a degraded natural resource base. They often lack knowledge about potential options for adapting their production systems and have limited assets and risk-taking capacity to access and use technologies and financial services.
Agriculture is both a problem but also a solution in terms of climate change. If you want to really counter the effect of climate change, you have to take agriculture into consideration. It's not only the energy and the transport sector, but agriculture is both impacted by climate change, the only sector that is actually impacted by climate change, but it's also the sector that can provide solutions to climate change. When you do reforestation, when you sequester carbon into the ground, this all has positive impact on climate change.
The flood disasters are further exacerbating the crisis of food insecurity because of the destruction of farms and forced migration, which has turned victims to strangers in their homeland. Consequent upon food insecurity and displacement, rising incidents of flooding will subsequently exacerbate insecurity and underdevelopment. A recent report by Oxfam reveals that about 94 million Nigerians are living in poverty, against an estimated 200 million people. Growing food insecurity, substantially endangered by flooding, will deepen the poverty level in the nation, where 70% of its people are farmers. This will significantly undermine the Sustainable Development Goals of no poverty and zero hunger. According to the United States Agency for International Aid, about 3.7 million Nigerians spread across 16 states are already food insecure on account of insurgent attacks, internal displacement, and rising food prices. With most of these causal factors still a challenge, recurrent flooding will deepen food insecurity, experts warn.
Not only like as conflict responsible to increase, but the impact of climate change is so powerful nowadays on food that we are stepping behind. We are reversing the positive trends that we have seen along the decade on reducing the nourished people and also providing a better nutrition.
Experts say nutrition is highly susceptible to changes in climate and bears a heavy burden as a result, as seen in the impaired nutrient quality and dietary diversity of foods produced and consumed, the impact on water and sanitation, and the effect on patterns of health risks and disease, as well as changes in maternal care, child care, and breastfeeding.
Il est aujourd'hui avéré que l'atteinte
It is now proven that achieving SDG goals by 2030 requires taking things to the next level. That's say to intensify and focus our responses on what actually works and to increase our sustainable investments in rural transformation.
The human and financial costs of climate-related flooding are already much higher, longer-lasting and far-reaching than we thought. A study produced by researchers at the Columbia University and the University of California, Berkeley, found that a single hurricane can cause a country's national income to decline for the next 20 years. Another study found that without large-scale adaptations, river flooding could cause a 17% increase in global economic losses over the next 20 years. Even a relatively small flood can have unexpected costs months later.
But climate impact is real. 22 to 23 million people alone were impacted and forcibly displaced because of change in climate. Because every 5 seconds, a child is dying from starvation. And when there's $300 trillion worth of wealth in the world today, that's unacceptable and it's inexcusable.
Cities in developing countries are particularly vulnerable to climate change impacts, especially changes in rainfall because of the exposure to extreme weather events. The excessive rainfall leads to flooding, especially in areas with poor natural drainage systems, areas where water inundates the capacity of the soil to contain water, and in areas where poor land use practices prevent drainages from channeling excess water away. Every year, many Nigerians experience flooding without an ending in sight. As such, experts say it requires painstaking effort that will sustainably mitigate its occurrence. That's our program for today. Thank you for joining us. Please check our YouTube channel for this episode or other episodes of the program. You can also drop us a line or two at earthfile@channelstv.com. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the team here in Lagos, it's bye for now.